afternoon. You having fun at the quarterly? I hope so. Y'all better say that, right? All right, so I want to start off with a quick story. By the way, you're in the right class, right? Inner beliefs plus outward action leads to your current reality? Okay, good. So after the war, there was a general and his young lieutenant, and they were making their way back home. They got on a train. The only seat available was in front of a young, beautiful woman and her grandmother. And then shortly after they took off from the station, the train goes through a dark tunnel. And there was total darkness. The young lady, actually before that, the only thing that could be heard in that total darkness was a kiss and a slap. Okay? Now, everybody had their own perception and their own interpretation of what was happening. But shortly after they got out of the tunnel, the young woman was thinking to herself, I'm flattered that that young lieutenant gave me a kiss, right? But, she felt bad because that her grandma slapped him. She's like, why did she do that? The grandmother was thinking to herself, the nerve of that lieutenant to kiss my granddaughter. But I'm so glad that she had the courage to defend herself and retaliate. The general was thinking to himself, man, the guts of my lieutenant to go up and kiss that woman. Why did she slap me by mistake? And so the only one that really knew the truth was the young lieutenant. And in that moment of total darkness, he saw an opportunity to kiss that young woman and slap his general. So, would you take that? Hey. So, what are we talking about here? Perception and interpretation, right? But whose perception and whose interpretation? If you've gotten on calls with me, you probably heard this already, but the adult that you are today, no matter how old you are, at the level of beliefs, views, values, just how you see the world, 50% of those were concluded by the 4-year-old that you once were. In fact, in a magazine, Psychology Today, they said that the personality of the 26-year-old that you're going to be is developed by the time you're 3. Another 30% by the time you're 8 years old. Your values, your beliefs, how you think is concluded by then. So 80% of the adult that you're going to be is fully cooked by the time you're 8. So you tell me, whose perceptions and whose interpretations are you living your life from? 4-year-old, 8-year-old, by the time you're 10, pretty much. So now, we all have phones, right? That's the day and age that we live in. How often does your phone get updated? Every year, someone said? Yeah, pretty much, like every year almost. So right now we should be running iOS 12 if you have an iPhone, right? And the comparison is we all have an operating system. My operating system is called Angel, right? That's my operating system. And I should be running Angel 39.0 in most of my beliefs and values and thoughts. I should be. But unfortunately, I'm not. There are some areas in my life that I may be Angel 6.0, Angel 8.0, Angel 10.0, Angel 19.0. How often do we take the time to update our beliefs to more like what we are today, to be in alignment with who we say we want to be and where we say we're going? How often do we do that? And if you talk about results, right, the reality that you're creating, again, is all based on what you believe up to this point. Because whatever you believe will be. Thoughts become words, words become actions. Actions create habits. Habits create beliefs because you see the same result. You're like, it must be true. Or you heard that over and over again, it must be true. Or you saw that growing up over and over again, it must be true. And then your beliefs create your reality. Who has children or has nephews and nieces, right? You remember when your child was first born? What did you think about them? Just first thing that comes to your head. Perfect. Perfect. It's true, perfect. You were once that. Someone once held you and thought that. You were once just like that, perfect. Nothing wrong. But what happens? What is that? A circle. No, that's you. Okay, that's you. That's you as that baby. Perfect. Absolutely nothing wrong. Okay? Then guess what happens? You begin to grow up, have life experiences, you begin to see the world, people tell you things, right? Do this, don't do that, life is like this will happen to you if you do that. You start having thoughts or hearing thoughts, because some of your beliefs aren't even yours. You start hearing thoughts, and you start getting programmed, just like a robot, getting programmed. Those thoughts and those programs create feelings and emotions based on those thoughts and your programs. Those feelings and those emotions generate certain actions and behaviors. Now, you may have a goal to that star right there is like your star goal, whatever that may be for you. Whatever, money, career, a relationship, a house, whatever the goal may be. And you should be able to go get it. If you go straight from who you are, your authentic self, your true self, if you go from you to that goal, you should be able to get it. Boom, straight shot. But guess what? You go for that goal and you say, oh, I don't know about that. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not worth it. Maybe I can't. And that I can't or that I'm not good enough leads to a feeling of, that doesn't feel so good. I feel sad or I'm scared. Whatever the feeling may be. Alone, abandoned, disappointed, whatever that may be. And that feeling leads to a certain action that says, it's okay, I'm just going to go over here. And you end up somewhere else. And a different result. Dictated by your thoughts, dictated by your feelings, dictated by your actions. So there's sort of a pattern here, right? Beliefs and thoughts create feelings, actions, and results. And just to give you an example, 8 years ago, I realized that I had a negative relationship with money. Who can relate? Right? Poverty mindset, lack. And I realized, I remember I was taking, my mom was visiting. She came to see my daughter, her granddaughter. And she worked from home. She had her own business, and she needed do you remember those USB sticks that gave you internet? Remember those? You got it at Sprint, at those different stores. And I took her to Sprint to go get one. And they denied her because she had an open balance. So then we went to, what's the other store? The pink one. T-Mobile. We go to T-Mobile, denied. She had an open balance. So we go to AT&T. Denied. She had an open balance. And I was like, dang. I have an open balance with my energy company. I had an open balance with this other company. I was doing the exact same thing. That's what I learned. What else was I going to do? And at that moment, I realized I needed to change that. I was also taking a look at the things I said. You know, at the time, if I would see like a 30-year-old guy with a nice car, I would say something like, your daddy got you that car. I would have a negative opinion about that thing. At the time, the NBA players were on strike. And I was like, those greedy bastards. They're making millions of dollars. How dare they ask for more? But have you ever asked for a raise? I asked myself, Angel, did you ever ask for a raise? Because you felt like you weren't getting what you deserve? Yeah, I did. Why can't they? They're just playing at a higher level. But they should have the right to say, hey, we're not getting what we deserve. We feel like we're being used. No difference. So I started changing how I talked and how I thought. I had to do a lot of rituals. I had to forgive, my ancestors, my mom, and say, that was your decision. That's how you chose to manage your money, and I forgive you, and I let it go. I released it. I did a lot of spiritual rituals to sort of let that stuff go, and then start creating, what do I want to believe? What is the 30-year-old that I was at the time, 31-year-old that I was at the time, how do I want to believe? What do I want to believe about money? And what do I want to believe that will get me there where I said I wanted to go? Right? So I started blessing. If I saw a guy my age with a car, I say, hey, man, bless you. He didn't hear me. I was driving and I was blessing him. I was blessing everything that I wanted to have in my life. I was just blessing it. I started saying, for example, because your thoughts, your words, and your actions have to be in alignment. I can't go and say, okay, I'm going to think positive about money, and then when I'm going to go buy something, I can't afford that. They have to be in alignment. Or I can't go and do something that requires me to spend money and not do it, not take that action. To the point where I was like, okay, if I have to do certain things that make me feel like I was living in abundance, like at the time I was like, well, what could I do? What gives me that feeling of abundance? And he was like, okay, getting massages, right? Like that's kind of a luxury at the time for me. So I was like, I'm going to make sure I get a massage. And then a buddy of mine called me and said, the Texas Rangers are coming into San Antonio to do an exhibition game. You want to go? The tickets are $150. And I was like, whoa. Like at the time, I was like, that's a lot of money. Like I don't have that kind of money. But it's like, whoa, no. You said you were going to change the way you talked about money. So here's an opportunity to do it. Do it. And I was like, here's $150. And I did it. No big deal. But I started changing how I talked, how I acted, how I felt about money. I started blessing things. And so that's sort of what we're going to do today, okay? Go to page 55 of your workbooks. Because, we have to use our experiences, like Charlie was saying this morning, for feedback. You want to know what your result is? Your beliefs, your results prove whatever you believe. Whatever you believe creates your results, okay? Just to give you an example how that works. We have to use, I don't know if anybody saw Lorna Larsh's quote when she was announced. She said in her quote, live your life as if everything is rigged in your favor, right? So the next time a conflict comes, and I was speaking with a client earlier today about a coaching call that we had, and this happened. He's like, hey man, let me just throw something personal at you. And so he did. I'm having this problem with this person in my life. He's a person in my son's team, and I just don't like him. He's this, he's that. I said, okay, let's put the story aside. And describe him to me in the level of quality. So he said, he's being like this. He said one word. Okay, so how, when, and with who are you like that? Ooh. Because it's really easy to say, well, I don't act the way he acts. I don't act the way she acts. That's not me. Quality. What is the quality of that person is? So I'm using my experience for feedback to show me who I am, because I can't see myself. Right now, the only people that are seeing me are you guys. And so if I have conflict with Forrest right there, right, and I'm describing Forrest in a certain way, all he's doing is showing me the mirror. Hey, man, there's something there that you got to see. And someone asked me at lunch, well, does that apply for situations as well? Not just people? Yeah, situations as well. Whatever feelings are coming as a result of this conflict that you're having in the situation is reflecting something in you. It's like the highway sign. Hey, Houston Street, 3/4 miles away. Am I going to stop at the sign that says 3/4 miles away and exit there? Or am I just going to say, okay, that's a sign for the exits coming up? This situation, this experiences, these results, these people that are creating conflict in your life, they're just pointing the sign at something. They're just telling you where to look. And if you're, like Luke was saying, he started investing in his personal development. If you're investing in your personal growth and your personal development, it is your responsibility to find out, what is this about? What's coming up for me? Okay? Even though when we talked about programs, you didn't train yourselves, right? It wasn't your fault. You were programmed that way. It's your programs. It's what you learn. However, as an adult, it is your responsibility to heal that stuff. Mom and dad can't do it anymore. You do. You have to reparent yourself. Okay, so here are some areas of your life, okay? Physical environment, career and business, finances and wealth, friends and family, fun and recreation and entertainment, health and fitness, love life, personal and spiritual development, okay? And I've also given you some definitions or some descriptions of each of those areas, okay? So I want you to read those descriptions. Take a minute to read those descriptions. And as you finish, go ahead and turn the page to page 56. And I want you to pick an area of your life where you're getting you're not getting the result you want. You're just not getting, even if there's more than one, but which one's that one that you're like, man, I really want to get this area to just be here. Like, pick the area that you're not getting the result you want and write it down in that blank. Everybody got their area? More or less? So if you're finishing up your next blank, all I want you to do is summarize what has been the result to this day. Up to today, summarize in a statement, this has been my result in that area. In your own words. It sucks. That works too. Now try to be a little bit more specific. We sort of did something like this at the mastermind yesterday, where it was like, what is your current situation and what is your desired situation? And there was like a compare and contrast there. So it's similar. What has been your current results in that area? All right, how are we doing with that one? Almost done? Still working a little bit? People are done? Okay. Your next blank, it's going to take some thinking, a little bit of thinking. Just list your beliefs. Let me tell you what I mean. Let's talk about money really quick. What are those things that you either heard all the time about this particular area or you say all the time? Like, money doesn't grow on trees. Like, what, do you think I'm made of money? We can't afford that. Whatever it is you hear. Like, when it comes to relationships are 50-50, right? Whatever it is, that it's those things you say over and over and over again about that particular area. That's your belief. Or if you want to be more explicit, what is it that you believe about this area? What is your belief about this area? Or how do you define this area of your life? Because you find your belief in your definition. Money is the root of all evil. Those are beliefs. The thing about it is, more than likely, you're probably repeating some stuff. It's probably not even your own voice. And these are the things that our parents told us, or our caregivers, because they were watching out for us. And they were watching out for us from their perspective. Like, I remember when I started learning about this stuff, the speaker that I was listening to, his father would tell him all the time, hey, when you go after things in life, when you go after your goals, don't get your hopes up. Life's going to let you down. His dad was trying to prepare him for life, to not be disappointed. What he didn't realize is that he was programming his son to, right when he got to his goal, to say, never mind. Don't get your hopes. It's probably not going to happen. In the same workshop that I was at, the other speaker was saying that he remembers, and this is silly, but this is how silly it is. He remembers when he was little, his mom would go to the grocery store, and when they went by the vegetable aisles, he liked the red bell peppers. But at the time, red bell peppers were a little bit more expensive than green ones. And so what he would do is he would try to sneak in red bell peppers into the cart. And by the time they got to the cash register, the mom would notice, and he's like, take those back. We don't have money for that. Those are too expensive. Now, fast forward to him being an adult, his wife, he was going home from work, his wife called him and said, hey, honey, can you pick up some things from the grocery store? Sure, give me the list. So he gets the list. He's going in, he gets the cart, he walks by the red bell peppers, he's like, oh, red bell peppers, those are my favorite. So he got some red bell peppers, finished the list, made it all the way to the cash register. He's like, ooh, no, those are too expensive. We can't afford those. Went back, put the red bell peppers back. He was already a grown man. And at that moment, because he's in this work, he says, you know what? F that. I have money now. I can buy those red bell peppers. So he grabbed them all. He bought them, and I don't condone what he did, but I get what he was doing because his symbolism. So he had a sunroof in his car, and on his drive home, he threw them out the window. He says, I can afford red bell peppers. I have money now. Boom. I can afford red bell peppers. I have money now. Boom. Just throwing them out the window. It's silly, but that's how it works. You don't even realize, because it's and some people tell me, well, I had a great childhood. I don't remember having anything negative. But you may not remember, the adult may not remember, but how did the 5-year-old interpret it at the time? Okay? It's your interpretation at the time. It's the impact that it had for you. For example, I'm gonna be a little vulnerable with you, okay? In my relationships, every relationship, I've only really had 3 serious relationships, but they all ended up leaving me for another man, okay? Where does that come from? So I went to therapy, not like psychology, but like spiritual therapy. And the lady said, okay, well, where does that come from? Did you ever see infidelity? No. Did you ever see anybody cheating on anybody? No. God, where does that come from? And so we did a little bit of work. We did some meditation, and not necessarily regression, but just sort of took me back, you know. And I remember when I was 7 years old, my mom remarried, you know, after getting divorced to my dad. She remarried. And that moment where it's like from 2 to 7, it was just me and my mom. Just me and my mom, me and my mom. And anybody have Latina moms here? Okay. They're very possessive, right? And so, yeah. And so she made me the man of her life, you know, up until she met the guy she married. And then our dynamic changed. And as a 7-year-old, I was like, what about me? Like, nobody sat me down and said, son, you know, this man's going to come. He's an addition to our life. I'm always going to be your mom. Nothing's going to change between us. You're still my partner. No, nobody talked to me to give me perspective. It just happened because that's what you do. You move on, right? Well, my conclusion was a woman left me for another man. And that becomes that happened in my own home. And that becomes what you go look for in the world because it's what you learn. So we recreate the things that we concluded. We go look for those experiences. We think that that's correct. That's what we know. Okay? And we're going to get to that in a second. But again, on beliefs, what are the beliefs? Okay? How are we doing with that one? We're done with that one? Okay. Page 57. Now we're going to talk about that. It takes a little bit of reflection here. We're going to reflect, okay? Time to reflect. Just like I told you that story, my mom remarrying, right? This belief that you wrote down is tied to a story or a series of stories. It could be, you could sum it up. It could be like, oh, well, this is sort of like how it was. Or it could be specifically a story. I'll give you an example. I was working with a client with his poverty mindset. We did something similar to this. If you've worked with me on the money mind maps, you know what I'm talking about. He told me a childhood story, a childhood memory that he had. He remembers driving around with dad in the car. He was in the back seat. And every time they would drive by a luxury home or a luxury car, his dad would say, those rich people, they must be doing illegal things to get those kind of stuff. Every time. So he grew up with that in his head all the time. So that would be something that if my area of life that I'm working on is money, that would be something I would put in there. A story, it's a memory. It's a real life memory that I have. So that's what I'm asking you to do is look at the area of your life, look at the results, look at the beliefs, and try to link it to some story or some kind of memory or everything is associations. Everything is an association for the most part. So reflect a little bit, take some time to reflect and write down maybe 1 or 2 or 3, maybe more, or maybe it's just a general statement, a summary of what you remember from that belief, a story, a memory, okay? And if you have any questions, pull me aside and I'll go to you. Just raise your hand and I'll go to you. By the way, this class has 2 parts, okay? Tomorrow is part 2. We're going to create a new reality based on this belief, okay? So this is like, it's about identification and this identification. So today we're identifying what is, and then we're going to create a new belief for what we want it to be. So tomorrow is part 2. How are we doing? Take your time. Like, I had a question, and so what I was telling her is like, she said I can't tie it to a specific memory. And like I said, it could be an overall sense thing. It's like, so she wrote her belief I'm not going to tell you what it said, but she wrote her belief. And I said, who did you hear telling that to you? Who did you hear those words being said to you? She said, the person. Okay, can you see that person telling you that? Yeah, I can. It was before 5. Okay, so write that down. Describe that. You know, how did you see that person? What was your interpretation of what they did? How they lived their life based on that area of your life? Because again, it's your interpretation, your perception of what you saw. Because again, how many people here, their parents, and if you did, that's great, you had great parents. but that they sat you down and they gave you perspective about stuff. Okay, awesome. But you saw not many hands went up, you know? So that's all we really need is perspective, you know? Just being told, just being included so that we don't misunderstand, because we're kids, you know? Like another client was telling me something about, she really thought she had a horrible relationship with her father, and she lived her life that way. But when we went to a specific memory and she looked at it from the adult backwards, she realized, oh, actually that's not true at all. My dad was actually there for me. So what am I talking about? What we're talking about here is reframing our stories. Try to make sense of them now as adults, because as kids we couldn't. And then no one sat us down to give us perspective. So now as adults, can we look back and make sense of those stories, right? And so see them differently. Because the mind, if anybody's familiar with Joe Dispenza, his work, everybody familiar with Joe Dispenza? Yeah. He says the mind doesn't, we can hack the mind. It just remembers it a certain way, but if we could replace, it's like, I always see it like Indiana Jones, where he's like replacing that thing, right? So that the way he stays weighing down, he just replaced it, right? So it's just replacing it, right? What we're doing is creating a new neural pathway in your mind, right? That you're remembering a little bit differently. And some people say, well, I don't want to forget that. Well, you're not going to forget it. You're just defining it differently. You're giving it a different meaning, right? So what would be like, so what we'll do tomorrow, this is what we'll do tomorrow, is what would have been more ideal? So for example, in the story that I told you where the dad said, oh, those people are doing illegal things about money, it's sort of like reverse visualization. What would have been more ideal for your dad to say at those times that would have helped you create a healthier relationship with money? Oh, well, it would have been more ideal if you would have said, oh, man, those people, you know, they work hard for their money and they deserve it. I don't know. I'm just giving something simple. So it's what would you have liked to have heard? And then there's other steps that we'll take for that, and I'll tell you those tomorrow. But that's what we're talking about, is just write the story, the memory, or sum it up, okay? Anybody still having a hard time with that, or everybody pretty much done with that part? Okay, good. So basically, again, when we start reframing our stories, right, as adults, I always say we have to reparent ourselves. And anybody here like superhero movies or superhero shows, right? I learned a lot from those movies and from those shows, because, you know, I believe that there's a superhero inside us all. And a lot of you are actually living out your superpower, which is your gift, your purpose. You're actually living it out loud, and you're putting yourself out there in the world and helping people. So you are living out your superpower. But like any superhero, we all have our kryptonite, right? Things that hold us back, right? And there was a situation where, like, I was looking at Supergirl, the show Supergirl. Are you familiar with that show, Supergirl? She had gotten beat so bad in this show that she ended up in a coma, okay, in the show. It's just a show. But there's still lessons there, right? And I use that for feedback and for reflection. So she was in a coma, and there was this character in the show who had the ability to go into her consciousness and have a conversation with her. Even though her body's unconscious, but her consciousness is still there. And so she created her apartment as the environment for her to be in this coma, because her apartment is what gives her comfort. And so the guy goes in, and he's outside, but he goes in, and he's like, yeah, like you're in a coma. And she's like, what? What do you mean? I'm in my apartment. It's like, no, this is what you created while you're in a coma so you can feel comfortable. It's like, no, I'm not. Look, I'm in my apartment. And she goes to the door, and she can't open it. And she's like, well, I'm Supergirl. I'm going to use super strength, and I'm going to open the door. She couldn't. Well, I'm going to beat down the door. She couldn't. I'm going to shoot fire out of my eyes. I'm going to open the door. She couldn't. She tried all kinds of superhero stuff to open the door, and she couldn't. So she blew up a lot of things in her house, so she's picking everything up. And as she's picking stuff up, she's connecting with things in her house. And she finds this picture of a pet that she had. It's a cat, her and her cat. And then that brings memories, and she starts reflecting back into her life, into childhood, right? Even though she's from another planet, she grew up as a human being, right? And so she's thinking back on her human life. And so then there's stuff going on in the real world, and the guy says, hey, I'm being called back, and I gotta head back. We have a mission. But I just want to let you know that your sister just said something, and I think you need to hear it. You go, what did she say? She said that her human name is Kara Danvers, and then her superhero name is Supergirl. So he says, her favorite person in the world is Kara Danvers, not Supergirl. So that gets her thinking, and she's reflecting. She finishes picking up. She takes her glasses because she looks so different with glasses, right? She puts on her glasses like Clark Kent would do, right? And she just sort of like, at that moment, what I saw was her fully embracing her humanness, right? And fully accepting that part of her. Because she was always in conflict with her humanness and her superhumanness, right? And then at that moment, a key pops up on the table, and she grabs the key, goes to the door, and opens the door and walks out. Just like a human being. So it wasn't even her superhero that saved her. It was who she was, embracing who she was, and accepting all that. In a different episode, she had to face a fear that was paralyzing her, because this enemy would use like psychological stuff to paralyze her. She would like, whatever you were afraid of, you would see it, and you would paralyze, and she would paralyze her. But she was Supergirl, so she would find her way to not allow the fear or whatever she was seeing in her head to go all the way through. It wasn't until she allowed that story to go all the way through, to see the fear all the way through, to face it and see it happen in her head. And then her sister came and said, because in her head, she thought she had killed someone important in her life. That's the story she was telling herself, right? It's all about the stories we're telling ourselves, our associations, the way we define these things. And so her sister said, no, silly, that's not how it happened. You actually saved his life. She's like, I did? Yeah, you did. So it was her allowing herself to go through that fear. It was reframing it in her head and seeing it happening differently. And then when she went back to face that enemy that was doing like boom, like something with her mind to show her fear, it had no impact on her. And that's what we're doing here. We're looking at these limitations or these things that create conflict within ourselves, and we're allowing ourselves to face them and see them all the way through, and then we are changing them, giving it a different meaning, so that they no longer have the impact that they have, and they help us, they sort of release us. It's like, I always see myself like running. You know, you have those bungee cords in your back, and you've seen those in TV shows where you run, and it pulls you back, because the bungee cord goes only so far. Well, we have a whole bunch of bungee cords in different lengths on our backs, tied to our suits, right? And the more you do something like this with one experience, you cut that cord, and then you run a little bit further until the next one pulls you back. So that's what we're doing here. We're just taking one experience at a time, one painful memory at a time, one limiting belief at a time, cutting it so you can run a little bit further until the next one. And then once it pulls you back, like, oh, okay, here's another one. Let me look at it. Let me see what this is about, what's showing up. And usually when that happens is when you have conflict with someone, or when something didn't go well at work with your practice. Those moments, they're all working for you. You got to stop seeing them as something negative. It's coming to show you something that you need to see so that you can take that opportunity, fix what it needs to fix, so you can continue to move forward, so you can cut that bungee cord and you can move forward. So don't get hung up when those conflictual situations or conflictual people come into your life, because they're coming to help you. Everything's coming to help you. Like Lana said, everything is rigged in your favor. Okay? So I hope this was helpful. If you need to take more time tonight, take the time tonight to do it. If you didn't fill it out here because maybe you weren't clear or maybe you weren't sure, please do it tonight, because tomorrow afternoon we're going to do part 2, and you got to have done part 1 in order to do part 2, okay? Thank you so much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good night.